Picture this: 5 civilizations, separated by oceans, mountains, and centuries of history. No ships connecting them, no shared language, no way for one to have ever heard of the other. And yet, every single one of them got fixated on the same kind of date. A date when their world, as they understood it, was supposed to come apart. The Maya carved it into stone. Chinese court astronomers wrote about it in official imperial records. The Assyrians built actual emergency rituals around it. And the Norse turned it into one of the most haunting myths in human storytelling. None of these people ever spoke to each other. So here's the question that should be bugging you right now. How does that happen? How do completely separate cultures end up afraid of the same thing in roughly the same way? Stick with me, because by the end of this, you're going to understand something about your own brain that most people never bother to figure out. This isn't actually a video about ancient prophecies. It's a video about why the human mind seems built to expect an ending. And once you see this pattern, you're going to start noticing it everywhere, including in headlines you scroll past this week. Quick thing before we get into it. If this is the kind of history you're into, go ahead and subscribe now, because where we're headed gets a lot weirder than most channels are willing to go. Let's get one thing out of the way immediately. This isn't a video telling you the world is secretly about to end. No countdown, no hidden code, no prophecy you need to prep for. What we're doing is something a little more fun than that. We're going to look at real records left behind by real cultures and follow a pattern that keeps showing up over and over in completely unrelated parts of the world. Because here's something they don't really teach you in school. Almost every major civilization that's left written records ended up developing its own version of an end-time story, not by copying each other. There's something about reaching a certain size, a certain age, a certain level of sophistication as a society that seems to push human minds toward the exact same dark question. What happens when all of this just stops? We're going to walk through 5 different cultures and look at what they genuinely believed based on what they actually wrote down and built. Then, in the second half, we're going to pull back the curtain and ask the real question: why does this keep happening? What is it about human psychology that makes entire societies obsess over a single date of doom? Let's start with the one you've probably already heard of, the Maya. If you were anywhere near the internet in 2012, you remember this. The Maya long count calendar wrapping up a roughly 5,125-year cycle, landing right on December 21st. The internet lost its mind. Bunkers reportedly sold out in a few countries. News networks ran specials with dramatic music. And then December 22nd showed up completely uneventfully, like every other Tuesday. Here's what almost nobody mentioned back then. The Maya never actually described this as the end of the world. That panic was a modern misreading, blown up by documentaries chasing views, not an authentic ancient belief. What the Maya actually recorded is honestly more interesting than the apocalypse version. They tracked time in massive units called baktons, each one running about 144,000 days. 13 of those baktons made up one full creation cycle. When that 13th bakton wrapped up, the Maya didn't think existence would just shut off. They believed the world was resetting, recalibrating, like flipping a calendar to a new century, except on a scale most of us can barely picture. There's an inscription at a site called Tortuguero in Mexico that some Maya researchers believe references events happening after this date, tied to a god named Bolon Yoktek-Ku. I want to be upfront here. That inscription is partly damaged, and how scholars read it is genuinely debated. But the existence of the debate itself tells you something. Even the most doomsday Maya text we have isn't a clean, simple prophecy of annihilation. It's messy, ancient, and points toward continuation, not collapse. So why did this become the most famous doomsday date of the modern era, honestly? Because we wanted it to be one. Researchers who studied the 2012 panic afterward found that anxiety about the date spiked hardest in places already dealing with economic stress and political instability at the time. The ancient calendar didn't manufacture fear out of nothing. It gave already existing fear somewhere to land. Keep that detail in your back pocket. It's going to come back around later, and it's going to matter a lot. Now let's jump across the planet to ancient China, where something strikingly similar shows up, wearing a completely different outfit. Chinese imperial court astronomers were some of the most obsessive record keepers in the ancient world. For centuries, they tracked the sky with a level of patience that would make a modern hobbyist astronomer look lazy. And one category of event terrified them more than almost anything else: planetary conjunctions. Multiple visible planets lining up in the same patch of night sky at the same time. In Chinese astrological tradition, a major planetary alignment was read as a sign that the mandate of heaven, the divine permission for an emperor to rule, might be shifting to someone else. This wasn't a fringe belief whispered in back alleys. It shaped actual government decisions. Records from the Han Dynasty describe court officials urging emperors to perform specific ceremonies, change their public behavior, or even rename their era specifically to head off the danger an alignment supposedly signaled. Here's the genuinely impressive part. Modern historians of astronomy have gone back and checked some of these old Chinese predictions against the actual physics of where those planets would have been. And in several cases, the ancient calculations land remarkably close to correct for events that were supposedly centuries away when the prediction was first written down. This wasn't guesswork dressed up as wisdom. This was careful, repeatable observation, just filtered through a worldview where astronomy and prophecy were treated as the same field of study, because to them they basically were. So now we've got two civilizations on opposite sides of the planet, with zero contact, both circling the same idea. Long cycles of time, and a moment when the sky itself signals that something big is about to change. Could be coincidence. Let's see if it holds up. Head west now into ancient Mesopotamia, home of the Assyrians and Babylonians, and you'll find one of the oldest written doomsday traditions we have any record of at all. Clay tablets dug up from the ruins of Nineveh, the Assyrian capital, contain what scholars call Akkadian prophecy texts. These read almost like structured forecasts, written by court diviners, laying out specific sequences of disasters, famine, war, strange omens in the sky that were expected to come before the collapse of a kingdom, or in the most extreme texts, the end of the known world itself. What's genuinely impressive here is the method behind it. Babylonian and Assyrian astrologers were tracking lunar eclipses with real mathematical rigor long before anyone had a telescope. They worked out an eclipse cycle lasting roughly 18 years, allowing them to predict eclipses with solid accuracy. Worth noting, the catchy name we use for that cycle today, the Saros cycle, is actually a much later Greek label slapped onto the pattern. The Babylonians had their own terms for it, but the underlying math, the actual cycle they discovered, was real, and it was theirs first. Certain eclipses, especially ones landing on dates already considered unstable in the calendar, were treated as direct warnings that the current order was ending. There's a documented case from the reign of the Assyrian king Esarhaddon involving a predicted eclipse that caused enough panic in the royal court that a temporary substitute king was installed. A real person standing in to symbolically absorb whatever disaster the omen was warning about, while the actual king went into seclusion until the danger had passed. And this wasn't a one-off act of desperation. Substitute king rituals like this happened more than once across Assyrian history whenever the omens looked bad enough. This was the actual government of a major empire, treating a calculated astronomical event as a real, immediate threat to the throne. 3 civilizations in Maya, Chinese, Mesopotamian, all separated by oceans, languages, and centuries, all independently landing on the idea that the sky sends warnings before something major ends. At this point, you might be thinking, okay, this has to be a coincidence. Hang on, because we're about to look at why it almost certainly isn't. Let's pause the world tour for a second, because this is where things actually get interesting. People who study what's called apocalyptic thinking, mostly anthropologists and psychologists, have noticed something worth paying attention to. This pattern isn't really about astronomy, or calendars, or any specific god. Those are just costumes the fear wears depending on where you happen to be born. The actual mechanism underneath is something far more basic, baked into how human cognition works in general. Here's the core idea, and it's simpler than you'd expect. Humans are pattern recognition machines. Our brains evolved to notice cycles because noticing cycles kept our ancestors alive. Seasons, migrations, tides, the moon. Spotting a repeating pattern meant you could predict danger, predict food, know when to plant, and when to get inside before the storm hit. We got so good at this that we now find patterns even when they aren't really there, which, by the way, is exactly how conspiracy theories are born, but that's a topic for a different video. Now add a second ingredient. Researchers sometimes call it terminal anxiety, our deep discomfort with open-ended uncertainty. People don't like not knowing how a story ends. We want closure, a resolution, an actual finish line. Time that just keeps stretching forward forever with no defined shape feels unsettling to most human brains in a way that's hard to even articulate. Put those two things together and you get the exact engine behind every doomsday belief we've looked at so far. Civilization gets advanced enough to track long cycles, the Maya long count, Chinese conjunctions, Babylonian eclipse math. The moment you can see a cycle clearly, your brain immediately wants to know what happens when it finishes. And because we crave narrative closure so badly, the answer is almost never allowed to be nothing. The ending gets dramatized, made significant, often made catastrophic, simply because that feels more psychologically satisfying than the story just quietly continuing with no real climax. There's actual research backing this. Studies looking at collective anxiety around things like the Y2K computer bug at the turn of the year 2000 and the 2012 Maya panic found the same pattern both times. Doomsday anxiety doesn't spread randomly through a population. It spreads fastest in places already dealing with real-world uncertainty, like economic stress, political instability, or rapid change people don't fully understand. The ancient prophecy or the modern computer glitch isn't creating the fear out of thin air. It's handing an already anxious population a specific date to pin their anxiety onto. And honestly, that might be one of the most human things about us. We'd rather have a concrete, even terrifying explanation than sit around with vague, undefined dread we can't put a name on. Fear with a name feels manageable, even if that name happens to be the actual end of the world. If digging into how psychology quietly shapes history is your thing, this channel's going to have a lot more of that for you. So go ahead and hit subscribe before we get into our last case study, because this one ties everything together. Let's head north now into the cold mythology of the Norse and look at Ragnarok, probably the most famous doomsday myth in Western pop culture, mostly thanks to Marvel movies and a certain very loud German opera composer. The original sources tell a more layered story than the movies bother showing you. Ragnarok, recorded mainly in texts like the Poetic Edda and Prose Edda, compiled in Iceland in the 13th century, but built on much older oral tradition, describes a brutal sequence of events. A harsh winter with no summer in between it, brothers turning on brothers, the wolf Fenrir breaking loose, a final battle where most of the gods themselves die. Here's the part pop culture almost never includes. Ragnarok was never written as a true ending. After the destruction, the old texts describe a new world rising out of the sea, green and renewed, with a handful of surviving gods and 2 human survivors repopulating the earth. Sound familiar? It's the same structure we saw with the Maya, an ending that's also a beginning, a cycle, not a full stop. Historians who study Norse culture point out something important about the world this myth came from. Scandinavia had genuinely brutal winters, unpredictable harvests, and constant low-level conflict between groups. A myth describing the ultimate winter, the ultimate war, followed by renewal, wasn't abstract theology to these people. It was a way of giving shape to very real hardship they faced every single year. The myth turned chaos into a story and, crucially, gave that story an ending followed by hope. Same mechanism we already named, just wearing different clothes this time. Pattern recognition applied to seasonal suffering instead of planetary alignments, a craving for closure applied to winter instead of eclipses. And the result developed completely independently. Thousands of miles from Mesopotamia, China, or Central America ends up structurally almost identical. Destruction, judgment, renewal. So here we are, 5 civilizations: Maya, Chinese, Assyrian, and Babylonian Norse. Different gods, different calendars, different continents, different centuries. And every single one of them built some version of the exact same psychological shape around the idea of an ending. Which brings us to the part that actually connects to you, sitting here right now, in whatever year you happen to be watching this. We still do this right now, today. Remember Y2K, the fear that computer systems worldwide would catastrophically fail the second the calendar flipped to the year 2000. Billions of dollars went into preparing for it. Some people stockpiled food and cash like it was the end of days. When midnight actually hit, almost nothing happened. And that's not because the worry was silly. It's because engineers spent years quietly fixing the underlying problem before it ever became a crisis. The fear was loud, the fix was boring. That's usually how it goes. Remember 2012, the Maya calendar panic we just spent 10 minutes on. Same psychological shape, different costume. And if you pay attention to the news cycle today, you'll notice we're still constantly generating new versions of this exact structure. Climate tipping points discussed in language that sounds almost biblical. Artificial intelligence framed by some serious people as a genuine extinction-level risk. Economic predictions of total collapse that resurface like clockwork every single time the market dips. To be clear, some of these concerns are grounded in real, careful science and absolutely deserve attention. Others are pure pattern-seeking anxiety, just dressed up in modern technical language instead of ancient astrological language. The tools changed. Clay tablets became cable news. Planetary alignments became algorithm-generated headlines. But the underlying human mechanism, pattern recognition, plus the craving for closure, equals expecting a dramatic ending, hasn't shifted even slightly in thousands of years. Understanding this doesn't mean every warning about the future is automatically wrong. Some cycles are real. Some warnings are scientifically solid and deserve your full attention. What this history actually hands you is something more useful than blind skepticism or blind belief. It gives you a way to tell the difference between a genuine evidence-based warning and a story your own brain is building simply because uncertainty feels worse than even a terrifying conclusion. Next time you see a headline insisting some specific date marks the start of the end, take a beat. Ask yourself if it's grounded in something real, the way those Babylonian eclipse calculations actually were mathematically solid, just wrapped in spiritual language for their time. or if it's simply your brain doing exactly what it's always done for the Maya, for ancient China, for Mesopotamia, for the Norse, and for every other culture that ever looked up at an uncertain sky and needed, more than anything else, a story with an ending. That's the real reason every ancient civilization feared the same kind of date. Not a shared secret, not some hidden cosmic truth passed between cultures that never met. Just the same software running quietly in every human brain, across every culture, across every century, doing exactly what it evolved to do. If this changed how you think about doomsday predictions, ancient or modern, drop a comment and tell me which of these 5 civilizations surprised you the most. And if you want more videos that go past the surface level mystery and into the actual psychology and history underneath it, subscribe, because this channel is just getting started.